Bedford Forest, we've talked about any number of these great men and women who made the South, made the Confederacy, even though it was only around for 4 years, who made it worth talking about 150 years later. But this is my 5th year here at camp, and out of all the times that I've been here, I've never actually heard someone give a presentation on Robert E. Lee. And so I felt that was a gap that needed to be addressed. And even though most of us, I'm sure, have heard about him, have read about him, I figured it never hurts to get a refresher course, especially when we're spending a week talking about Southern history. So I want to spend the next little bit talking about the great general and why he's still important to us today. Why we still remember him, even though he didn't win the war. It's often that we remember the generals who won their wars, but we remember Robert E. Lee, and we honor him even though he didn't win. We love him even more in defeat than most generals are loved in victory. Robert E. Lee's story starts, of course, in Virginia. As the Marquis mentioned just a little bit ago, at this point, we didn't consider ourselves Americans. We associated ourselves most of all with the state that we come from. And that's still more true for Southerners than it is for Northerners. Their first question always is, so what do you do for a living? And from the South, we always ask, so where are you from? And we always say, I'm from North Carolina, I'm from Virginia, I'm from South Carolina. We still associate ourselves with the state that we come from. And Robert E. Lee's story is intricately tied up with Virginia. Above all else, Robert E. Lee was a Virginian. He was born in a place called Stratford. It was a very fancy estate in Virginia. He came from one of the wealthier families. The Lee family was definitely upper crust. His father was Light Horse Harry Lee, who was a famous general from the Revolutionary War, who Lafayette mentioned just a little while ago. Unfortunately, Robert's father was not very good with money. Despite Robert being born into the Southern aristocracy, his father made terrible business decisions. He was always gambling the family's money on new ventures. And by the time Robert was 3 in 1810, they didn't have enough money to keep the house, and they had to move from their huge estate into a 2-bedroom apartment in Alexandria, Virginia, which is just a couple miles from Washington, D.C. I don't know if any of you have ever been to Alexandria, Virginia, but I wouldn't recommend going there today. It's kind of been swallowed up by Washington, D.C., and it's just one of the most horrible cities to travel through, and there's nothing but government buildings. I would not recommend going there today. But that is where Robert E. Lee grew up. He was born not too long after the United States was started. He was born within a decade of George Washington's death, if that gives you any idea of the time frame there. And since his father had lost most of their money, he didn't grow up wealthy. They grew up not even quite middle class. They fell in the lower class. And he wasn't given as many opportunities as most other people. But even from the beginning, Robert E. Lee was determined not just to be another person. He wanted to be like his father. He wanted to be someone that men looked up to and respected.